3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
There is no other institution that has the ability, uniquely,
without a heritage, every generation starts over.
Ask not
to remind the current regime
what your country...
We, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do.
All action.
to get back in their box and stay there.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
From the Heritage Foundation, this is Heritage Explains.
Education has been an American value almost since the beginning. Actually, before the beginning. The first school in the United States was the Boston Latin School, which was founded to educate the young men of Boston way back in 1635, focusing on Greek and Latin, the works of Virgil and Cicero. Its graduates included John Hancock and Samuel Adams. Benjamin Franklin was a notable dropout. Today, the Boston Latin School is still in existence. In less than a decade, it will celebrate 400 years of education in America. Today, education as the key to self-advancement and a better life is still a principle held dear by Americans. But many families find the education that they desire for their children is out of reach. Public school systems are often mired in bureaucracy and misplaced priorities, which put political objectives over the well-being and education of children. In the absence of competition, academic outcomes are an afterthought. The values of conservative families are denigrated, often replaced by radical gender and race theories. We at the Heritage Foundation believe that the best thing that we can do for families in search of a good education is to give them choices. And the availability and quality of these choices seems to be on the minds of voters heading to the polls this November. Lindsey Burke is the director of the Center for Education Policy here at the Heritage Foundation. She joins the podcast to explain. Lindsey Burke, welcome back to Heritage Explains.
Thanks for having me back.
Here at the Heritage Foundation, you study education choice.
Yes.
And why is this such an important topic for you? Why did you decide to do this work?
Well, I think it is foundational to our work on education policy. There's no issue that matters more when we talk about reforming education than the ability for families to actually choose learning environments that are the right fit for their children. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. Being able to choose a school that fits the needs of your kid, the values that your family holds dear, a school that is safe, that's effective. I mean, this really is what it's all about. And so this drives all of our work. I would say day to day is making sure that every single family in America has that option.
And can you give us just like a real quick overview of like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Like what sort of policies at Heritage like we advocate for to make education more accessible for families?
So it's amazing the point in time that we're at right now. So you know this well, but just 3 years ago, not a single state in the country had a universal school choice option. And now today we have 11 states that have universal school choice. And what does that mean? It means any family in one of those 11 states can get their share of their child's education dollars that would have been spent on them in a public school, and they can take it to a private school. They could use it to school at home if they wanted. They could do an a la carte online education option if they wanted. They can choose an option that's the right fit for them. Every single child in that state, regardless of income or background or any other factors. This is incredible. Again, 3 years ago, not a single state had universal school choice, and today we're at 11. And so in those states, that could mean a child gets a voucher to pay for tuition at a private school if they want. Maybe it's a private Catholic school in their neighborhood, or maybe they get an education savings account where the family gets a portion of what would have been spent on the child in their public school in an account that they control, and they can then use it to pay for private school tuition, or maybe they use it to pay for some online classes. Maybe they hire a private tutor. Maybe they never set foot in a brick and mortar school at all and do a completely a la carte educational experience for their kids. So, of course, that would also include things like charter schools, homeschooling. So there's a whole wide range of options now that are out there that encompass this idea. We don't even say school choice anymore, right? It's education choice. But the fact, again, that we are at 11 states that have universal choice overall, we're talking about more than 63 programs in the country: vouchers, tax credits, education savings accounts. So we're at a really, I think, pivotal time in K-12 reform where the dam is starting to break. We're starting to see this monopoly, government-run, government-assigned, government-controlled school system, that edifice is starting to crack. Families are getting more and more control over their child's share of their education money and are using it to choose these options that are varied and meet the needs of their individual children.
So obviously we're in a new cycle here in 2024. As you look out, especially as this election is coming up next month, how do you feel like the game has changed a little bit? What is going on out there that's getting people interested in school choice at this point?
I think it's one word. It's values. And this is something that, quite frankly, the movement, the education reform movement, shied away from even talking about a few years ago out of a concern that may have turned off some potential supporters. And so for so many years, school choice was really sold on either almost liberal grounds, right? These sort of social justice imperative that school choice is really important for those who need a safe and effective school. And that is true, right? We want kids who maybe have no other options to be able to escape these schools that aren't the right fit for them. But that was almost like a liberal argument, if you will, for lack of a better word. We were also selling it on libertarian terms, right? The sort of Milton Friedman economic imperative. And that is all true and remains true today, right? We know that school choice creates these competitive effects that improve outcomes not only for the kids who exercise choice, but also for the public schools nearby, as they have to compete and improve to attract families. But funny enough, we were not selling choice on conservative ideas, right? So we made the liberal case, the libertarian case, but we weren't making the conservative case that if you are worried about the values that your child's public school is teaching, school choice is an answer for you. If you're worried that radical gender ideology has made its way into your kid's public school, you should be an advocate for school choice. If you're worried about critical race theory, whatever it might be, right? If you are worried that the curriculum and content and the general approach that your child's assigned public school is using, you have to be an advocate for school choice. It will not only help your individual child find a school that's the right fit for them, but it will make your public school more responsive to your needs in the future and the needs of the community in the future.
So maybe take us to some individual states. Like what's going on? What's on the ballot? How are we seeing school choice kind of being debated in the states?
Yeah, well, it's something that for quite a few states is actually a question that's out there right now. It's on the ballot. It's something that voters will be considering this November in quite a few states. And look, if we kind of step back just from the next few weeks right ahead of us, I mean, this is an issue that I think has really driven home for proponents of school choice that even once you get one of these excellent options in place, let's say you get an education savings account program or a voucher or a tax credit scholarship program, that's the very first step. We've seen this in Arizona. Arizona, unfortunately, is maybe the best worst example. It has a phenomenal education savings account program. We have worked on that program for 2 decades now, getting that in place and making it workable for families. Arizona is one of the freest states, number 2 actually on our Education Freedom Scorecard for education. And yet, even though that program is in place, every year groups like Red for Ed and the Teachers Union and the opponents of education freedom try to kill that program. Even though it is highly successful, meets the needs of families, they're supremely happy with it. And so we have to be ever vigilant even after these options are put in place for families. And so I think that's a lot of what is playing in the background for families, for voters, for parents this November is who will best support education freedom in the long term.
Anymore, appropriately, education seems to be a major topic writ large, not just in choice, but also like what is going on in schools. COVID, I think, gave us an unprecedented look into schools. And ever since then, it seems like we've been grappling with lots of education issues. Is there anything like that you're seeing that you think may be on people's minds as they go to the polls this year?
Yeah, I mean, I asked you when I got here, how long is this segment? We could talk about this for like 5 hours. So there's so much, right? I mean, school choice is the necessary condition to make all other reforms possible, in my opinion. That's like a non-negotiable. We have to have choice. But to your point, there are also all of these other interesting and important reforms that are playing out in the states. One that comes to mind is the Given Name Act. So the Given Name Act, if you haven't followed this closely, it is very elegant in its simplicity. It simply says that a school cannot call a child by a name other than what is on their birth certificate, absent written parental consent. Very simple, very straightforward, very common sense.
Seems pretty logical.
Seems pretty logical. But, the idea there is that if a child thinks that they are trying to go through what is deemed a social transition, right, of their, quote, gender, right, their sex, that a parent should be informed, that a school cannot hide something like that behind a parent's back. And often hiding it looks like calling a child by a name other than the name that's on their birth certificate, is that initial step in that process. And so making sure that schools are partners with parents and are not opaque about these very personal issues that might be playing out during the school day. So the Given Name Act has been either adopted or considered in roughly a dozen states now. Again, I think it's very elegant in its simplicity, but that's something that is kind of flying under the radar that deserves more attention. There are things like parent bills of rights that are out there as well that are gaining traction. And I think the real sleeper issue that we might see more of in 2025 and beyond at the state level is this idea of teacher certification reform. It sounds boring, but I mean, when we think about how it is that something like critical race theory or radical gender ideology or fill in the blank of the day has made its way into K-12 schools, so much of it is coming from our colleges of education. And these colleges of ed are in this enviable position of having total control over teacher certification, even though we know empirically there is no correlation between whether or not somebody's certified through a university-based college of ed and their ability to be a good teacher. And so we want to break that link. Not only does that mean people who are mid-career professionals, who are content matter, subject matter experts can make it into the classroom easier, but it also means that we're not reliant on these leftist woke colleges of ed that are not providing value in our K-12 system. So I think that's another sleeper issue that's out there that we'll see pick up some steam.
Lindsey Burke, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to Lindsey Burke for her contributions to this episode. You can follow her on X at Lindsey M. Burke. And you can find how your state ranks on the Heritage Education Freedom Report Card at heritage.org/education report card. And of course, thank you to you for listening to Heritage Explains. As always, you can reach out to us with thoughts, questions, or suggestions at heritageexplains@heritage.org. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Heritage Explains is written and produced by Mark Gagne, Lauren Evans, and John Popp.